60 yards. I think the sight tip's off by about a yard. Nope. Nope. All right, you guys see it all the time, wherever my button is. I shoot the snot out of a button. I have shot a hinge. I do like shooting a hinge, but what I haven't shot in a really long time is a wrist rocket like this. The last time I did it, I think, was when I was sighting in my dad's bow, left-handed. Not bad, I don't think. We're at 60 yards. Probably not the smartest thing to do. I haven't shot one of these in forever, but let's see if we can't stack some in there at 60 with the old wrist rocket. Dude, it is so windy. It's blowing this thing all over the place. The anchor feels different, that's for sure. That was good. It just feels so different. I don't know what the anchor should feel like on my face. I feel really high in the shoulder, but I only have 2 arrows right now too. I need to build some arrows. That looks like a good group. Maybe I'll have to go back to shooting this thing. It's not bad. It's just figuring out where I need to be and how to pull through that shot. The button. Get my stool out of here. All right, guys, so as we talked about in the intro, this is going to be a video on the different style of releases that are out there in the archery world. Which one are you shooting? Which one best suits you? Drop a comment down below and let me know. I'm really interested because I would say the vast majority, the large majority of archers that are shooting today are shooting an index style release like this Scott Shark right here. Right now for this video, pretty much I'm just going to gloss over the different styles of releases. So if you are just getting into archery, these are the things that you can look for, kind of a brief overview on how to shoot some of these and some of the pros and cons of each one of them. Like I said, this isn't going to be a brand specific video. You have to shoot this release or don't shoot this release. This is pretty much just going to be a broad overview of the different releases, the 4 main categories on the market today. This is going to be, I think, the most popular release that you're going to see at, Total Archery Challenge, Mountain Archery Fest, people out hunting, your buddies at your local club. I think the vast majority of people are going to be shooting this release. Or if you were just kind of getting into archery, this is probably the release that you have shot when you first started shooting. So the index style release, I think this is a good release. This is actually the release that I started shooting archery with when I first started. This is the Scott Archery Shark release, double jawed. So it opens up both ways. I don't know if they still make this anymore. I bet they do because it was a very popular release. It could be also referred to as a wrist rocket. But this is going to be a release that you're actually going to strap onto your wrist. And you're going to use this wrist strap to help pull the bow back, if I can get it on. All right, you're going to put it on, get it set up on your wrist, and then it's all set to go. You can turn it to the backside when you're walking around, hunting, carrying your bow, climbing up your tree stand, doing all the stuff. It's always attached to you. You know where it is all time. So that's one of the benefits of a wrist release or an index style release like this, is that it's attached to your wrist. Now they do make attachments for some of these other releases where you can attach a wrist style, tether to it, but that's not actually how you're going to hold and activate the release. But with a wrist strap release, we'll take our fake bow here. The jaws are open on this one right now. You put it on your D-loop, close the jaws, and it is locked in. It is solid. So when you draw your bow back, you're going to draw it back right here. Most people are going to put their finger behind the post when they draw back, and then when they get to their anchor, rotate your hand to the top side and put your rest your finger on to the trigger, and then you're just going to build tension until the release fires. And that's going to be the same with a couple of these releases here. So like I said, your most popular style release, this is going to be your index finger style release. These are also probably going to be the cheaper of the options in the market, regardless of whether it's a thumb button, a hinge, a back tension release, or a tension activated release. These wrist rockets, these index finger style releases are by far probably going to be the cheapest across the board. Like I said, this is what I first started with in 2015, 2016 when I first picked up a bow for the first time. And the reason why I did is because that's what all my buddies shot. That was what was available at Bass Pro Shops. The availability in the market for these is pretty high. So there's a lot of them out there. They're pretty easy to find in any sporting goods store. So that's why I think they're such a popular release. And you got guys like Cameron Haynes who are killing everything across the sun with these. And then you got guys like Tim Gillingham in the target world who are shooting an index style release like this, shooting it very well, still winning tournaments to this day, even though he's a Masters now. He can still hang with just about anybody out there. What I did once I went from this index style release and I graduated to more of a handheld release. This is a thumb button, this is the UV button, this is my go-to release of choice right now. I also have in front of me a Stan Onyx thumb button, which I've been shooting a lot more now that it is springtime and this is the time to tinker, time to play with different things. But the way these releases work is you have your hook in the top of the release here. This one has a spring to keep the tension down, and this one is unsprung, so it will be open, but there's a little magnet enclosure that holds it down once you get it there. The way these work is you have your cocking mechanism on the bottom. You would lock it in, and that locks the hook down. Hook it on your D-loop, and the benefit of a thumb barrel, especially one with a string retender on the front, you can just hook it onto your D-loop and just hang it up in the tree stand and leave it. You don't really have to worry about it. So the way these style releases work, much like an index style release where there's a trigger mechanism to open the jaws, this one, instead of being activated with your pointer finger, it's actually activated with your thumb. Put your thumb on the barrel, increase pressure, shot goes off. So the way I like to shoot these is I will pull back, get into my anchor position, rest my thumb on the barrel just enough where I know where it's at, and then I'm increasing pressure and I'm actually expanding my hand. And as my hand expands, my thumb stays in the same spot on the barrel, it expands, and eventually it pulls up all the travel on the barrel and sends the release. So you can shoot these very well, and you can make, not that one time, but you can shoot these releases very well, have very good surprise shots on them, especially in target. A lot of people are shooting them. This is probably your second most popular release on the market behind an index barrel, whether it's your average Joe Schmo shooting in his backyard to your average bow hunter, all the way up to your professional target and 3D archers. Thumb barrel is probably going to be in one of their hands eventually. Now, the reason why I switched from an index style release to a thumb barrel had nothing really to do with the coolness factor of it. A lot of it had to do with a lot of tension and a lot of pain that I was getting in my shoulder when I was shooting an index style release. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, this was way before I started YouTube, so I never actually really videoed myself shooting my bow. But I was one of the people that would kind of pull down here and crank it up to the side of my face. And by doing this right here, I put a lot of pressure and tension in my shoulder, and I'd shoot for more than like 20 arrows and it would hurt. So in my head, I thought it was maybe the release that was doing that, when in reality, it was probably the draw cycle I had that was causing me a lot of pain. But if you can think about it, like if you ever worked out and you've deadlifted before, if you've ever used straps, now the straps are wrapped around your wrist and then they're on the bar. Now, if you're using and holding a lot of the weight of that deadlift in the straps, you're not actually activating the muscles in your hand, which in turn is activating your forearm and then your upper arm into your shoulder and then into your back, using the big muscles like your lats, your rhomboids, and your traps to maintain stability. So when I was using this, I was putting all the pressure in my wrist and not actually getting tight in my arm to draw back. And I was trying to really crank that thing back and get it up. And I never really had any tension in this system for the draw cycle. Once I went to a handheld style release, whether it be a hinge or a thumb barrel, I found that actually grabbing the release and having something to hold in my hand activated all the muscles in my hand, forearm, upper arm, shoulder, and then in my lats. And what that did was it took a lot of the pressure off myself when I got into the draw. And then once I got here, I could put all that tension into my lat and my back and relax my hand and my forearm and now make the shot once all of that let off has happened on the backside of the draw cycle. So like I said, the second most popular release you're gonna probably find, you know, at a lot of these events and especially a lot of target archers' hands is going to be this thumb barrel because it's a really good release. They're pretty adjustable, UV's adjustable. The Stan Onyx probably got a little bit more adjustability in it. But between these two right here, they're really nice. They have really crisp actions. They're good to shoot. They have a little different style in terms of, you know, the style of release, how fat it is, how smooth it is. And I've made a comparison videos on the UV button versus the Stan Onyx. If you want to check that out, it's in the library. But good releases. I've shot the Carter Wise Choice, super popular release, which is the same thing as John Dudley's Knock To It. I've shot Stan thumb barrel releases. I've shot a Goat. What else have I shot? I've shot a couple. I've been through them, but these are the ones that I've kept. The other ones I've either moved on from or I have somebody else borrowing them. Third most popular style of release. Now this is a release that you're going to see a lot if you go shoot tournament archery, whether it's 3D, indoor, you're going to see a lot of people shooting a hinge release. Like I mentioned before with the index style release and the thumb barrel, the reason you're slowly activating this thing and not jumping on it and like whiskey throttling it, the reason why you're slowly building tension and letting it naturally just go off is because it creates a surprise shot. As soon as you tell yourself, I have to go now, it's not a surprise shot anymore. Now you're anticipating the shot, and like I said, you could be adding undue inflection into the bow and English and sending that arrow way off the pin by the time you actually fire it and release it, you could have jerked the bow up, down, left, right, whatever your tell is. Getting a shot that is a surprise shot that breaks, that's the ultimate goal. That's what we're all striving for. At least that's what I'm striving for. Now, when you're shooting a hinge style release, unlike an index finger and a thumb barrel where there's actually a mechanism that fires the hook, the hinge does not have that. So the hinge works on a little bit of a different platform. There's the hook and then there's another piece in here and at the moon. And as those two pieces, I'm trying to like make it where it's like, as these two things, they're together. And then as you rotate the release, they get closer and closer and closer to the end until they overlap and then they release. So inside here, this hook is on the moon and it's attached, it's attached, it's attached. This one has a click, so you can hear it click. There it clicks, and that lets you know you have whatever your travel is set from here to the fire button. You keep rotating, keep rotating, keep rotating, and the release goes off. Eventually it happens and they break. That's why a lot of target archers will shoot a hinge style release, is because once you draw back and you get to your anchor position, you get here, you get to the click, and then all you worry about doing is continually aim and working the release, and then the release goes off. There's no real pre-ignition movement of I have to go now. As long as you just keep working the release and keep working the release will eventually go off and send the arrow. Now, the way this works, like I said, there is no button. You're probably asking, well, how do those two things overlap? And they do it by rotation because it hinges. The release starts forward like this, it's locked in, it's not going anywhere. And as this ring finger comes over the pointer finger and continues to travel, eventually those two moons in the hook release from each other and send it. So I know people who like to shoot them really pointer finger curled in, ring finger really over the top, and they're set really hot. And I know people like myself who this is a pretty cold setting, and I just like to continue to work through that the whole time. I know when I start getting jumpy and I start getting a lot of target panic, and what ends up happening is when I'm shooting a thumb barrel release is I'll get back and I feel like I'm trying to pull the release off my face instead of continuing to build pressure in my back. And once I go back to the style hinge release, as soon as you try to do that, man, it is not good. So The hinge style of release, I really like going back to that because it really forces me to get here and get into my solid anchor position and really work my back muscles down here, my lats, and really try to pull those to get the release to go off. That is 3 styles of release that I have in front of me. I have the index style, your thumb barrel, and then your hinge. And then there is a 4th category here, which I don't have any of those releases anymore. I used to have one, and I don't like it. That's why I got rid of it. It is the resistance style of release. It is the John Dudley Silverback. It is the Carter Evolution. Stan Onyx makes one. They have 3 different styles of release with the same platform right here. So that's really good by them to make something where you can change from all 3 of those styles of releases. But the way a resistance release works is you need something like this. It really helps to have a bow scale so you know what your holding weight is on your bow, but you could always math it out, like 70-pound bow, 80% let off, call it 14 pounds. If your holding weight is 14 pounds, you actually take that style of release, and there's a spring and system in here, and what that does, what you do with that is you set the trigger activation part of it to, let's say, 16 pounds of force before it goes off. So it has a thumb barrel like this, looks like a thumb barrel, but it's not, it's a safety. You actually hook this up, hook it onto your D-loop, you'll draw back, come to anchor, let go. Now you're holding 14 pounds. The release isn't gonna go off. What you do is you're increasing pressure and you're pulling through the shot in between, and you're adding more tension and more tension to that back wall. Well, once that tension gets to that 16 pounds, the release will fire. Now you can make it way hotter. You could make it 20 pounds if you wanted to. So you have to put an extra 6 pounds of force onto that back wall to get it to go off. But I noticed when I did that, the way I like to shoot my bow is I like to get into my anchor position, and if my pin's not settling, I like to add just a little bit to it to settle everything down before I start relaxing my hand and trying to work through the thumb part of the release. I noticed when I was shooting that release, I had a ton of anxiety that as soon as I started to add a little tension to get everything to settle down, the release would just fire when I didn't want it to. And then if I made it hotter, or if I made it colder where I needed more force for it to go off, I found myself just really wrenching into that thing. And the harder you wrench into it, there is a fine line between pulling into everything to get everything to settle down versus really cranking on it, because then when you start cranking on it, everything gets really jerky, for me at least. So I found if I had it too hot or too cold, too high of pulling pressure that I needed, I found myself to get here wanting it to go off and really having to wrench through it, and then throwing a bunch of arrows left, right, down. It didn't matter. I could not get that style of release to shoot well for me. I know there's plenty of people out there that shoot them and shoot them well. It just wasn't something I felt comfortable shooting. But at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters what brand you're shooting or what style of release you are shooting. I think having a really good surprise shot with back tension and having a shot that is repeatable, time in and time out, is going to be the best shot and the best release for you, whether it's a UV button or it's a Stan Onyx or it's a Scott Shark. It doesn't matter as long as you can shoot them well. I know, like I said, I saw this sitting on the bench because when we built my dad's left-handed bow, all my barrels are set up for right-handed. So I just pulled this out of the bottom because I could strap it on and, snake bite that thing and try to get the bow set up at least for him. He ended up going to a handheld style of release because it felt better for him. He had a more repeatable anchor position, but this has just been sitting on the bench and I wanted to shoot it again. Like, I haven't shot this thing since probably 2017, 2018, way before I started doing the YouTube stuff. So it was kind of one of those, like, why not? I shot it pretty well today. Grouped really well, grouped right there with my thumb barrel and grouped right with the hinge. So I might shoot this at like one of those archery events, whether it's Mountain Archery Fest or Total Archery Challenge. I might just bring it there and shoot a whole course with it just to see how it goes, because I might go hunting with it again. So we got a lot of really cool stuff coming up. I have a new set of strings that I'm going to toss on an Elite Ethos. These are from Haas Custom Bow Strings. I talked to Adrian down in Vegas, well, I guess over in Vegas. Revolution 99, it's a new fiber that's coming to the market. They're really hyped about it, and it that listening to them talk about it had me really hyped about it. So I definitely want to get these on a bow. Elite sent me a brand new Elite Ethos in 75-pound limbs because I wanted something a little spicier for this hunting season. So stay tuned because we got a lot of really cool stuff to talk about coming up. And if you're not, like I said, guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. It definitely helps me out, and it lets you know when I come out with new content. And if you want to know how to shoot a thumb barrel and how to shoot it well, you're going to want to be subscribed. So thanks for watching this video, guys. My name is Jeff Cordero. We'll see you on the next video.